So your union was interested in getting you back to work, and they wanted to do it as quickly as possible. And you hadn't heard anything. I guess your insurance company would be supporting you while this is going on because they're working under the pretense that you're going to be back to work soon. So they're probably trying to, they want to support you so that you don't, you've got enough resources to make it through until you can get back to work. They're doing the number crunching and they're seeing that.
Yep.
And then you've got your employer, and they're, I guess, in communication somehow with the union. Is there some kind of a back and forth going there?
Well, we're working up to that point now. So the treatment I went through was paid for by the insurance company. My follow-up independent medical examination was paid for by the insurance company because that's a requirement by the employer. They want to somehow extrapolate how healed you are after whatever course of treatment you go through. Right. And they want a document that states that you're healed or that you are safe to go back to work. And that doctor's statement then becomes the letter of the law. Yeah,
it's kind of a big game of pass the buck in this scenario. The college doesn't want the responsibility of saying, because they're trying to protect the public. Your employer doesn't want the responsibility or the liability of saying that you're okay without a medical authority coming in and making that call.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is we don't have the means to do a true assessment that actually could measure properly where you were at in the beginning versus where you're at now. It doesn't exist. We don't have if it does, I don't know about it. I've never seen any technology that could do that. So we're left with just a ridiculous kind of questionnaire that's 3 categories of mild, medium, and severe. Yeah. And it's a bunch of check boxes. So that is another, it's not a real thing. It's just there for liability purposes.
Yeah. And as we'll find out in my story, I end up going back for a third independent medical examination. And in terms of the cost and who's going to pay for that came into question again. And the word for, the parsing of words within that document came into question.
Right. So I guess moving up, if you want to move up to the 5 or 6 months where you'd been advised by the union to do what you did, which was stop going into work. You're calling in sick, and you were being supported by your insurance. And when did you find out that they wanted to do the investigative meeting?
Yeah. So again, before I say that, I will just clarify within my employer, and I think within probably many of these large health employers, there's the side of human resources that does an investigation and does the discipline part of it. And then there's the part of it that manages anyone who is off work with an injury or a disability as they deem it. And you would think that there would be communication between these two branches of human resources. There is not. So shortly after I went through treatment, I completed my independent medical examination. The disability side of human resources said, okay, let's talk about getting you back to work. And that was in May. And at that point, it was really, it felt soon. It felt like I might actually hit that deadline that was given to me by the union back in October. So it was really exciting. I was starting to meet with WorkSafe, meet with this branch of human resources and the union, and we were talking about what the options were. And simultaneous to that, or maybe on the second meeting or in between the first and second meeting, I got a phone call saying it's time to come in for your investigation. And I knew that was coming. I knew that was I was due for that, and I certainly wasn't under the illusion that I was going to get through this without having to be accountable for what had happened. But as soon as that clicked into place, the investigation side with human resources, all of the return to work piece stopped, completely shut down. And they said, we'll come back to this when your investigation is finished. So, okay, the balloon has been deflated again.
Right.
And it's time to gear up for this investigation. Still not knowing what that would look like. Still not knowing what the details of the investigation were. At that point, this was 6 months later, almost 7 months later. I still did not know that they knew about the hydromorphone. I did not know that was the cause for the investigation.
Mhm.
I mean, I knew because I knew what I had been doing, and I was owning it,
Mhm.
but no one had said those words to me. So I was still walking into that meeting, sort of blindly.
Mhm.
And we had requested, when I say we, myself and the union had requested to know what that meeting would be about. And the answer we got was that it was about my conduct at work. So about as non-specific as you could get. Now, when I heard that, I thought, well, okay, it's the hydromorphone.
What do you think the motivation is there not to be upfront about the topic of the meeting?
Oh,
What are they trying? Is this a further attempt to keep you off balance, so that when this meeting happens, they're hoping they can extract more information? Or
yeah,
what do you think? I mean,
I do think that. I do think that I can't see it as anything other than a control tactic at this point. My understanding of going into that meeting was that I had the right to know what the purpose of the investigation was, and the union had asked that, but that seemed to be as far as it went. And again, I felt confident and comfortable that this is what it was about. So my mentality at that time was, okay, let's do it. Let's go forward.
Let's reframe it and say that you had type 2 diabetes and your sugars were out of control. And what was happening is you were having fainting spells at work, and it had caused several problems with your coworkers and patients. And this was happening, and you got this phone call, and they wanted to come in for an investigation. But when you asked, they wouldn't tell you why. Do you think that would be? Do you think they would do that to somebody who had type 2 diabetes?
Well, again, given that there hadn't been an investigation at that point, they didn't really know. And I mean, to think about it that way, that would be shocking. Right. That would be absolutely shocking. And again, this is where I think stigma drives a lot of. The influence of stigma is huge, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's the double speak, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you received some kind of information from your union as to how to proceed with this. You asked your union what would be the strategy going in, and what did they tell you?
Yeah. So at this point, my contacts from the union were not necessarily, when I say high up, I mean, I wasn't dealing with labor relations officers at that point. I was dealing with stewards, shop stewards, and the disability management branch of the union as well. And that's just fine. That was all that I needed at that point, as I saw it. And the advice that I was given was, we don't know what information they're going to show, and don't go in there and bare your soul. Let's see what they have for us. Let's see what they're going to tell you about your case. There was I think about maybe a week to prepare for that, and we had discussion back and forth, myself and the union, and how much do we say I remembered of it. And they said, let's see what documents they bring forward, but basically don't admit to anything that you don't feel comfortable admitting to. So when I got into the meeting, and again, so this brings us, this is beyond May now. We're into the spring, into early summer. Mm-hmm. And the documents that they brought forward for me, the documents of concern, these were charts, patient charts, were from about a year and a half prior. Maybe about a year prior. And, John Doe, who came in on a Saturday with this, did you give him this medication? Well, I didn't recall. I didn't recall John Doe. I didn't recall Jane Doe. I didn't recall if I gave them that medication or not. Now, I knew that the timeline lined up that okay, this is probably accurate, and that this is probably was something on my part that had to do with my hydromorphone use. But did I remember those specifics? No, I did not. And that was what I said. I was not comfortable with how that meeting went. I felt like, Mark Furman at the O.J. Simpson trial, pleading the fifth to all of that. It didn't sit right with me, but I didn't recall specific charts. And to say, yeah, I remember that guy, and I remember that I gave him 1 milligram of hydromorphone and 50 milligrams of Gravol. That wouldn't have been true either. It really wouldn't have. And I don't say that, to try to cover my butt, but I would challenge any nurse out there, or any pharmacist for that matter, who, to recall a dosing for a patient over a year prior to a meeting, a stressful meeting. And
yeah, it's ridiculous. And it happens all the time, actually.
It does.
Yeah. In many of these meetings, these charts come out, and, imagine like yourself, you're working in an acute care setting, or I've seen emerge nurses where there was narcotics missing from 2 years prior, and they were under suspicion for no reason, really. And they were expected to be able to offer some clarity on whether or not that a dose was given 2 years ago. It's just, why are you, it's so ridiculous of a request that it, again, makes you wonder what the point is.
Yeah. So two things there. First of all, I think that because it gets handled as a disease, for better or for worse, it gets handled as a disease. So the employer has to tap dance around asking you anything that could be about your quote unquote disease. And so they're very, very reticent to say, to talk about addiction, or they won't talk about addiction. They won't talk about that this is suspected drug use. The interesting thing is, in this meeting, and it was the biggest question mark I had going into the meeting was, did they have evidence from my peers, or were there complaints brought forward by my peers or by patients, say? And no, there was no evidence brought forward that Sally saw me on this day and I was intoxicated. Mm-hmm. It was only discrepancies within the charting and discrepancies within the drug dispensing machine. So that's just kind of an interesting thing, because that later came back to haunt me again in the next meeting, which we'll get to.
Right. Yeah, it's okay. We'll move along there. There's just so many things that are confusing about the process.
Yeah.
But okay. So basically, you made it through that first investigative meeting. They asked you questions that you could basically plead the fifth without, really compromising your integrity, because the questions were so ridiculous in the first place.
Yep. And the meeting ended with my manager saying, "Oh, well, we know you. You know that we love you here, Corey." Those were the last words of that meeting. You know that we love you. Huh?
Yeah.
Talk about confusing way to end.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of a professional statement is that in any context? Yeah. Very weird conduct.
Yeah. And I guess it was giving me the benefit of the doubt, but I had just pled the fifth, so to speak, to all of their questions and denied all of their questions. Again, which I didn't feel good about, but if the tables were turned, I don't think I'd be telling the person on the other side that I love them. So
Yeah, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Hey, everybody. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.